Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening. This is a very special one. I This is like maybe 10 years in the making. And you only popped up on my radar like 4 years ago. And we're gonna get into why you popped up on my radar because it did strike a chord with me, although at the time I didn't know you well enough to publicly leave a comment. I didn't want to come off like virtue signaling. What you posted resonated with me on many levels, and I think it was super important to discuss, you know, your battles with anxiety and it's amazing how it doesn't affect more people in our space, although I think it does. It just goes undiscussed.
Right.
And we're gonna get into a lot of that because it's super important, but your career is amazing. Like you've done basically everything from the site to the coordinator. You started in the lab. You worked your way into many CTM roles with big CROs, with a big pharma company as a project manager. And my favorite part is the self-employed consultancy, CRPM, Clinical Research Project Management Association, which we need to get into as well. But thank you so much, Jess. It's long overdue. We never even did one in person at SOS last
I
year.
know. I know. I think I talked about the blanket fort, but you were running all over the place and I was
Well, I
running
was
all over
in
the
the blanket
place.
for it too.
I
We did
know.
like 5 podcasts in there
I know. I miss those. Yeah, with Disco Bear? Yeah, Disco
with
Bear was there.
Disco Bear. I was calling him Cocaine Bear though, but
Oh, he did
they
look
edited
a
that
little
out.
bit like he
And
had coast.
I
Yeah.
was like, man, this is trippy. But it was very cool. And
Yeah,
maybe part two, Fort Kindness at SOS Oklahoma City.
absolutely. We're
Okay.
there. If
All right.
if you guys are in,
No,
Sam
we're
and I are
in.
in.
We're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be bigger than last year. We don't know how we're gonna do it. We might need some ladders, but
I remember our event planner, conference organizing team at the time when they brought this idea to us. They were like, here's a strange one. And I don't know, the way they presented it, and we were like, okay, it sounds cool, but like, what, they're gonna be on the ground? And then they're like, yeah, they're gonna be on the ground. And we're like, all right, let's just do it, see what happens. And it actually
yeah.
was one of the highlights of SOS.
Yeah, I mean, and it was so wild. Like, I love that you guys are always open to creative ideas. Like, because I think it started with just a conversation on LinkedIn. Like, Sam had posted something about building a blanket fort, and I commented on it. And I think that somebody was like, "Hey, what conference are we going to next?" And we were like, "Oh, SOS. Can we do it there?" And y'all were just like, "Heck yeah, let's do it." And
Yeah,
I
and
just
our
love it.
event planner was trying to talk us out of it, but then we are like, no, it sounds like unique enough. We can make it work.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, now some of the conferences are starting to kind of follow suit in that and have like
Mm.
quiet areas or meditation zones. And I just love seeing this shift that's occurring, with mental health in the space. And it's really, I love
Yes.
that SOS was very gung ho on, embracing that and having that space for our healthcare or our clinical research professionals.
Just mental health is critical. Like it's part of my life. It's my mother has had bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder since I was 7. So like I've dealt with that firsthand. And then my dad became a psychiatrist. He was a foreign trained physician from Romania. By the time he got his residency here, I was in high school, but he finally became a psychiatrist here, mainly to figure out how to treat her,
That's
and
amazing. Yeah.
they've since divorced, but he still takes care of her. Of course, we're involved in her life, but that to me, and then we do a lot of psych studies, and that's
Right.
been foundational to my career since day one. I can't escape psych. I thought I
Well, because
could
it's
in
so
Yuma.
important. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
psych's
it's so
important.
important.
I
Yeah.
mean, we just did a bipolar visit the other day at the site. I cannot escape this therapeutic area.
Well, it's so great though, because I mean, mental health affects physical health. And so, like, I mean,
Yes.
even if you're in a mental health situation or even mental health crisis, anything like that, everything else is put to the side. You know what I mean? That's when your body's like, no, we can't do anymore. And it's so interesting with the stigma with it because we all have mental health, right? We all have brains, we
Yeah.
all have chemistry.
Yeah.
And it's good to see that our industry is starting to embrace that rather than shy away from that topic, really recognizing how hard we work and the pressures that we put on our clinical research professionals.
And luck
And it,
plays a lot into it because 1 out of
yeah,
10 people are affected by some mental illness, and there's more that have it underlying. Like, I
right.
think me, like the major reason why I stayed away from drugs in high school was because of my mom,
Hmm.
and I was always told, hey, because my parents joke that I'm permanently manic because I rarely get depressed. My
Yeah,
issues are not depression, it's
right.
anxiety.
Yeah,
But they joke and they say, well, that's probably like a gift, but be careful because
right,
there might be some underlying stuff. And in a way, I'm lucky, I think, that it manifested this way because it could have easily gone the
right.
other way. And it gave me a lot of empathy. And we'll get into when we're going to talk about your situation. I had a week where I experienced like uncontrollable anxiety. But
Oof.
we'll get to
Yeah.
that. I'll tell you how I managed it, and I do not recommend others to do this, but it gave me so much empathy just that week,
Hmm.
even more so for other
Right.
people. So when you posted that, I didn't know who you were, but it deeply resonated with me.
Well, I'm glad it resonated. And I think that was the most shocking thing. Did you want me to kind of talk about like what I posted and all of that kind of stuff? Were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we should maybe get some context to your career
Yeah.
because I don't
Yeah,
think people
absolutely.
realize. I didn't
Right.
realize you were that heavily involved and like that high up. You were a CTM many times. You're the ones we call when we don't get paid as sites.
Yeah, yeah,
The
exactly. Or
buck
you can't
stops
get
with
it.
you.
Yeah. We're the escalation point of all of clinic ops. Like,
Yes.
yep,
I need to
absolutely.
find you right now for a study.
Uh-oh.
And I
Posted on
can't find
LinkedIn,
I
yeah.
can't find
Oh
her.
no. Oh, that's not good. Well,
No. I'm not gonna stop though.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, I know that. I know about that about you. But yeah, I'm happy to give a little background. I'm Jess Thompson. I am the founder of the Clinical Research Project Management Association, but what kind of led me here, I am one of the weirdos that actually went to school for clinical research. I actually visited Tufts whenever I was in college, and Dr. Getz was one of my heroes, and it was really cool to kind of finally meet him at a conference later on in life. But yeah, so I went to Tufts, or I was in college, went to Tufts, learned about clinical research, and I didn't graduate from Tufts, obviously. I just toured there, but I got a degree in biology and started in a lab for clinical research. And then from there, I moved on to a coordinator role because
Wow.
I was processing the samples, for the study. So they're like,
But
well,
how did
maybe
you know about the clinical research, like to choose
because I
your
went and so I didn't learn about it in college necessarily. I was already a senior and I was touring some schools and one of the programs I was in, we visited Tufts and that's when they had just released, I think their like MD PhD program where
Mm.
they were focusing on clinical research. And um so I loved that idea. And because I didn't know really what I wanted to do with my biology degree. I just knew I wanted to do something in research and medicine. And then when I went to Tufts and visited, I was like, this is a whole new world. Like, I didn't realize this was out there. Um, I had no idea that that was even a career option for me because in my mind, if you're getting a biology degree, you really are going to teach. You know what I mean? You're going to be a professor. That's kind of the only path that we were shown for a biology degree.
I gotcha.
Yeah, so I did that. I applied and got a job at a lab. I worked at the University of Washington. Um, then as
Wait, you
that con
moved? You
oh
moved
yeah.
coast to
Hmm.
coast?
Yeah. So
Ah.
I moved over to Washington. I wanted to kind of explore the US and see,
You like
where I wanted to
Seattle?
land.
You like it up there?
No, it's way too rainy.
Way too rainy. I
Way
could
too rainy.
not do it.
My feet were wet for 3 years. 3 years, my feet were wet. Like I joke about it, but it drove me crazy. Like there were
I
ducks
cannot.
just in the parking lot every
That's
day.
another thing is the seasonal affective disorder. This is how,
Yeah.
Jess, this is where I saw more of my mom in me because I've
Hmm.
always been in sunny places, SoCal and
Oh,
then Arizona. That's all I've been my whole
yeah.
life. When I got a consulting gig right before COVID in the Bronx,
Hmm.
in February. I went there for 2 weeks. I did not see the sun, Jess, for 2 weeks. I was starting to get depressed, and
Yeah.
I'm telling you, when I say I never get depressed, maybe one day a year. There, I was depressed the whole 2 weeks.
It's
I was like,
crazy.
"Where's the sun?" When I landed in Long Beach, I wanted to kiss the ground. Like, thank God I'm here. I'm back. That
Well, you
has
were
a
in Yuma,
lot.
and you guys, how many sunny days a year? Like
Oh,
some
this is the
crazy
sunniest
amount.
place on earth.
Yeah, right. So I couldn't imagine going from there to the Bronx in February. That sounds
This was
miserable,
when I was in
honestly.
SoCal. I was in Long Beach, and
Oh,
I was like, love, and we get like gloomy mornings, but I was so happy to be back. I kissed the ground. I was like, thank God cannot live in that kind of place.
yeah, it was rough. I mean, luckily, I mean, I was at the start of my career though. I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I was working all the crazy hours. I worked
Mm.
in labor and delivery research too, so I would get 2
Ah.
a.m. calls to go collect a placenta. You know what I mean? Like it was wild. Like but it was so
Hey,
cool. It
those
was
are
a
worth money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Cord blood. Oh yeah.
Yep.
It was wild. It was a great time. Learned a ton. But was in that coordinator role there and then moved to Kentucky. My ex-husband's military, so
Ah,
military
okay.
bases. Moved to Kentucky, did regulatory at the University of Louisville. Then he got restationed again and then moved to Vanderbilt. And at Vanderbilt, I did like INDs, IDEs. I kind of managed those submissions for Vanderbilt. And then I did regulatory auditing and I was a clinical research navigator. So I kind of just did all the things, regulatory, auditing, and then started doing multi-center trials and managing those at the academic medical center. And then moved to CRO world after that and kind of did the CTM life for a few years and then moved to pharma, stayed there for a couple years. And throughout all this, though, I kind of noticed the same thing that like the commonality between each of these lab, site, zero, sponsor, nobody really knows how to manage the studies. We're all biology majors, science majors, nursing majors. You know what I mean? We're not really trained on how to manage the study, how to form a timeline, how to understand the budgets, how to resource accordingly. So that was the commonality I saw throughout. But whenever I was at the University of Louisville working in regulatory, again, this was early in my career, I got an email from somebody and their title was project manager and it was at like a pharmaceutical company. And I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. That's it. That's
Just
the
from
one.
their title? Like
Yeah,
that
I don't know
it
because it was
sounded
like
cool or what?
it sounded cool and I worked at the site, you know what I mean? And I like again, I was at the site level then and I'm like, "Oh, these people just come in and look at all of our stuff and see if we're doing it right." I want to be them when I grow up because obviously they're doing it all. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
whole like bright-eyed bushy tail.
Yeah.
So I looked it up and I was just like, "Okay, what does a project manager do?" And it was literally like manages projects and I was like, all right, cool. Cool, Google, thank you.
Very helpful.
Uh, yeah, right. And then I was like, okay, so what's a project then? Like if we're just gonna go basic. And it was like it has a beginning, an end, and objectives to meet. And I was like, seriously? Clinical research projects are projects,
So
like
every
clinical
mom
research
is a project
studies.
manager, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. Birth, 18. Did they die? Did they make it? Are they in jail? Like, I mean, those are your objectives.
Yeah.
You're trying to make sure they get it to 18 without any serious
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody's a project manager and even in your day-to-day life. And from there, I was like, okay, maybe this will help in my current role. I was a regulatory coordinator there. Um, and I started taking classes and I was like, oh my gosh, like there is method to the madness. Why are we reinventing the wheel every single time we do a study? Why aren't we using some of these like templates and structures and, you know, all of these methodologies that would help us in our day to day? And so I started bringing that information back to my team and like being like, hey, have you ever thought about doing it this way? Or, maybe we'll utilize this and this is how we can do status reports or however. So I took little pieces from there and I started kind of implementing it into my work.
Yeah, because you're
And
creative. I mean, the one thing I do know about you, and not just because of Fort Kindness, but what I hear and see about you is you're creative. So not
thanks.
every project manager is creative, I want to say. Many are very rigid.
Yeah, and I think it's more of like for me, it was having the freedom to explore it, right? Most project
Mhm.
managers, I feel like in our industry, are so busy. they're literally just surviving. They're not thriving in their career right now. They're surviving. They're there's a lot of, I mean, I'm not saying that all project managers in our field are not trained, but a lot of them aren't in project management. So we move up the ladder, right? We're moving from, maybe if they follow my career trajectory, it was lab, site, CRO, sponsor. And in that, I was just learning from the person in front of me. So I always relied upon the person in front of me to teach me what was needed for that role. But for example, moving from, a coordinator position to a CRA position, or that regulatory position to more of a CTM position, and having to manage multiple sites, you're managing that totally different. And there's just not a whole lot of continuity or anything in our industry. So whenever you hand off studies or anything, it's chaos. Um, so as I was seeing this, I was started when I was at Vanderbilt, developed like a project management training program because I was getting ready to test for my PMP. So I actually did all of like my project management training when I was still at coordinator role.
Wait, you developed it like for
Yeah,
the
so I worked at Victor, which is like Vanderbilt. It's the one of the grants for what is it? One of the grants from the NIH for academic medical centers.
okay.
We had a like our group there. So I put together, I talked to like my upper people and I was like, hey, can we do like a project management thing? And so we started hosting project management classes once every 2 weeks or so, or like at staff meetings and those kind of things, just to talk about like project management for everybody. How do you manage your stakeholders? How do you manage your time? Those kind of things that matter to everyone, no matter what your role is. It's just going to help you in your day-to-day life. And so that's what I was doing as I was prepping for my PMP, which is a project management professional certification. And because I just saw how much it helped me in my career and how much it could help others. Because then I recognized that we were all accidental project managers. We didn't really sign up for it, but we were doing the work.
I see.
And yeah, and so as I was kind of moving through my career, and I'm very much type A perfectionist, and I, of course, worked like we all worked like crazy during COVID, and we were all kind of, heads down, running as fast as we could to get to what we needed to for COVID. And that's kind of when all of my anxiety and um, depression, PTSD, all of this kind of stuff just kind of it kind of came together, and it was the
Wow.
perfect storm
Do you
because
have any family history of this?
yes, I do.
Okay.
But so this is a side story. When I was a coordinator, I was consenting a patient, and the patient was on drugs, or the husband was on drugs, and he thought that I was trying to steal their baby. And so he held me at knife point for 30
Oh,
minutes
shit.
as I was trying to consent. Like I went in there to consent, and he held me at knife point for 30 minutes because he started to go like lose it. And so that
Wow.
started, yeah, it's crazy just to think about the little things that kind of add up. So that started PTSD and anxiety
That
really
started it.
significantly. Yeah, I mean, I had anxiety, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but that point is where I really started to see
Holy
my mental health
crap.
trajectory change
And that
because,
was early in your career. That was when you were a
yeah,
coordinator.
yep, yep, that was
How did that
whenever my
situation?
first two
I'm always
years.
worried about coordinator safety as well. Like I
Yeah,
tell them you can't be, especially the females, like don't be in the
right.
room by yourself with a male.
Yeah.
Um,
And always one thing, and this is total side, I've changed topics a little bit, but always be closest to the door. And I
mm,
learned that the hard way was
that's a
never
good
put
tip.
yourself and the patient between you and the door. And which
Crap.
is, little things
So
like that
his
that you
wife
don't
was
think
in there
about.
with you,
Yeah, his wife was pregnant.
and
I
she
went in
was
to
letting
consent
him
the
do this.
patient. Well, he was on all kinds of drugs. So there was no stopping him. Like I was in there for about 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. The cops finally got him to go one way and I ran out the other way. But that's kind of where, and that's actually why I moved out of that coordinator role because I couldn't consent anymore. I was like, I cannot
Wow.
do this. Like I couldn't bring myself to go into a patient's room and consent because I was scared. And so that's where I kind of think that it all started, which then I kind of just, I went to therapy, I did those things, I did all the steps, but there was still that underlying thing. I still couldn't go in a patient's room and consent because I was still terrified of that. I had PTSD. And so I kind of, person I am, I kind of just through work, I focused on work. You know what I mean? I was going through stuff, I focused on work, but it was also early in my career. So I was trying to climb that corporate ladder. And I've been in the industry for about 15 years, and I was in about 12 years. Yeah, about 12 years when it finally I hit rock bottom. I was working crazy, crazy hours. I was up at 5 a.m., going to bed at midnight, working holidays, working weekends, working 60 to 80-hour weeks, crazy demands, crazy timelines. But at the same time, like I recognized that I did that to myself too. Because every time I met a deadline, even though how crazy it was, every time I met that deadline, it set the stage for the next deadline. So even if I achieved it, even if it was crazy, it was going to make it worse next time because I did it that time so I could do it faster next time. And that's
Yeah.
not how this works.
And you were holding yourself to that standard, or other
Of course,
people
all of
were?
it. I mean, of course, I was a perfectionist. I'm a type A,
Ah, you're a type
you know,
A.
I'm
Okay.
made for this industry. You know what I mean? Like we are the people that we need in this industry. You're type A, gonna get the job done, gonna focus, do whatever we need to do. And that was
Did
my
you ever
detriment.
have like, did you ever incorporate fun into your work or try to?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
yeah, like that creative side, we did like silly challenges and that kind of stuff. We tried to do all those kind of things. But I think that, at least my opinion, is whenever you work at that pace and that rate for so long, you can only go so far. If you're not taking the time to take care of yourself, your body's going to make you.
Yeah.
There's going to be a point where it just shuts down and it's like, this is enough. We have to, something has to get fixed. Something has to be better. And that's kind of where I reached. And it was just a combination. It was COVID. Like we had just gotten through all the COVID craziness.
Project
Um,
Warp Speed, that
yeah.
stuff was
Oh,
insane.
yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
didn't do
Yeah.
any vaccine studies, but we were busy with other indications too.
Yeah. Well, my entire background's vaccines. So I was like,
That's
it's my
crazy.
time. Let's go. Because I've all my background's infectious disease and vaccines. So I
Ah,
was
well, that's
ready.
another reason why our
Yeah.
paths never crossed. That's
Yeah.
like one of the
Yeah.
few areas I haven't really gotten into.
And I was one of the crazy ones that loved it. Like
Mm.
I didn't want to get out of it. Like I just love the craziness. I love seasonality of it. I love that, you start in 1 month and you
Yeah,
close 3 months later and it's
those are
just crazy enrollment.
insane because
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I could see how the anxiety is building.
Yeah. Exactly. And so it got to the point where like even a timeline would be like I would almost have a panic attack or a Teams message. Like it was just to that point where I was just like barely surviving day to day. I would cry between meetings, pull it together for my team, be there on the meeting, and then start crying right after the meeting. And it just got to the point where I was like, I can't live like this. And
Were you working from home at this time, or
yeah.
everybody
Well,
was, right?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was 2022.
So
So
that
yeah,
kind of
working
makes
from
it worse,
home.
no? Because no one's able to see you like
Yeah.
struggling and
Well, and it was COVID. So all we had to do was work. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
when
yeah,
we're stuck
yeah.
at home, I don't know if this was your guys' experience since you're a site. Like I had nothing else to do throughout COVID besides work. And then I felt like I was doing something, so I worked more. But there was no way for me to come off of that whenever the world
Yeah,
started
during
opening again.
2020, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
There was one
2020,
point I was doing
2021.
like a daily live stream just to like have something to do.
Yeah, just have some, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just nuts. And it was like the perfect storm. I think that that's the
Wow.
best way to describe it. It was a perfect storm. And it just got to a point where I didn't want to live day to day. I couldn't live like that anymore. And those thoughts scared me. And I was like, you know what? I can't, when I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to feel like this for one more second, I knew I had to check myself in somewhere. I was like, it's time to take this very seriously or you're not going to survive it.
Well, what were the symptoms like heart rate, sweating,
Yeah,
cold
so
sweats, or
my anxiety manifests like tightness in my chest.
mm,
And then I have panic disorder as well. So I get really frequent panic attacks whenever I'm there at that level.
yeah.
So having panic attacks, like tightness in my chest, feeling like you can't breathe. For me, I cried a lot. I
Mm.
wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I, yeah, like shaky. It was just because then if you don't sleep, you don't eat, it's that downward spiral and you're stuck on it. And having to pull yourself out of that whenever you don't even have time to think was really tough for me. Like I couldn't even survive. How was I going to pull myself out of that? And so
Jeez.
that's when I had to, and I was in therapy. But that weekly thing was just not enough. But with COVID and everything, I missed a lot of appointments because we really needed to meet these meetings.
Do you feel
And
like
so I
therapy helped, or like if
not at
you're
this point.
honest, not at this point?
Okay, not at this point, but it was partly because I wasn't on any anxiety medicine. I wasn't on any of these kind of things because I had canceled a couple meetings so I could, or sorry, canceled doctor's appointments so I could attend meetings
Mm,
that were pivotal.
mhm.
And I couldn't get a refill of my prescriptions. Again, perfect storm, absolutely perfect storm here.
Yeah.
And so what there was no amount, like I tried to take a mental health day. I tried therapy. I tried all these little things. But at this point, when I was at like extreme breakdown, there was no way around it. Like
Hmm.
there was no amount of self-care that was going to help it. I needed intense therapy, medication, and a break. And there was no way
Shit.
around that. And so that's what I did. I checked myself in and I did a partial hospitalization program for 6 weeks full time. And then I did a halftime kind of thing going back into work, just to kind of balance it out and be able to learn those coping skills and everything while I was working as well. But that's kind of when I posted on LinkedIn. And I think that's the post you were mentioning where I just
Yeah.
told my story. And I just said, we're an industry of overachievers, we're an industry of type A's, we're prone to this. Like anxiety is honestly part of the reason I'm successful is because of my anxiety. So it's a superpower, but it's also a detriment. And
Yeah.
so I kind of posted about that. And I was just like, I posted one day, and then by the next day, it had like 1 million views. And I was like, what?
Mm.
What is happening? I just thought this might resonate with one or two people, and that
Yeah.
would be enough. I had hundreds of messages in my inbox of people telling me their stories.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I had people saying, like, I'm so glad you said this. I'm not alone. Like,
That's
this
when
was
you
what I
popped up on my
needed.
radar.
That's
I'm
when I
sure I
mean, like,
liked
this,
it or something, but I don't think
yeah,
I commented because I didn't know you and I didn't want to like, you know, virtue
yeah.
signal or anything if I don't know you. But
Oh no, no, not
yeah.
at all. And but it was so interesting, like the support that I received. But I also got kind of some of those comments of like, you shouldn't be sharing this on LinkedIn. You shouldn't put this on
Nah,
a
that's
professional
crazy.
network.
What do you
I
mean?
Right?
Why
I'm
do
like,
people
we are a
do that?
healthcare industry. You're telling me that we are healthcare professionals. We are researching cures to illnesses and diseases, and I can't admit that I have anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was funny because I also had to have a hysterectomy soon after that because of, again, missed appointments. And I posted about my hysterectomy just to see what people would say
Hmm.
and to see if that stigma was still there. Nobody was like, this is personal. You shouldn't post this on LinkedIn. And that was fascinating to me, where I'm like, okay, we need to keep
That's
talking about this.
yeah.
We need to have these conversations. Because again, it was a hysterectomy. That's women's health. That's something that some people don't want to talk about either. So I'm like, okay, but I can talk about that. But I wasn't being told that I needed to watch myself legally or anything like that because of a post about a hysterectomy, but I had to about a post about anxiety.
Yeah, I hate morality officers or morality
Yeah,
police. Like it's a social media is a microphone, right? Like you use it however you
right.
want. Like as long as you're not
Exactly.
violating terms of service,
Yeah.
uh you can unfollow.
Right. And it was my experience. And that's what was so wild about
Yeah.
it was like, and I will absolutely tell you, a lot of it is me, right? It was my perfectionism, my work ethic. It was
Mm,
type A. It was wanting to meet deadlines. It was a lot of that, but it was also our industry. And
mm.
I think I would be lying if I said it wasn't. It was
Do you use Chat GPT heavy? Like are you a heavy user?
not a whole lot. I use
Okay.
it for some things, but
I was gonna
you
tell
know,
you if you use
yeah.
it because this reminded me I got this from Darshan and I did it
Uh-huh.
yesterday and it's like having your own therapist in your pocket.
Ooh,
Yeah.
wow.
So you
Okay.
ask it, tell me what you know about me that I do not know about
I don't know
myself.
if I want to know that.
Exactly. Don't do it publicly.
Like, I'm pretty self-aware, but I feel like that might hurt my
And then
feelings.
it tries to like be nice, and then you could say, cut to the chase, give me like the stuff that I should be scared of. That's what I
Are
did
you willing to
yesterday.
share yours?
Yeah, I mean mine's I'll share because it's not that bad, but it's basically like type A stuff,
Yeah.
where is it? Blind spot for personal needs. In your pursuit of business success and growth, you may have a tendency to deprioritize your own personal needs, health, and emotional well-being. This all-in mindset can make you overlook signs of stress, fatigue, or lead to longer-term negative consequences. I mean, it's basically right. Like,
Yeah.
Constant innovation could lead to instability, reluctance to delegate or step back, overcommitment, perfectionism leading to burnout. Chasing future-proof stuff could distract from the present, emotional detachment in decision making, risk of isolation due to high standards. Just the usual,
Literally, I
type
think
A.
you just described every clinical research professional, honestly. I think that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
literally what makes us good at our jobs,
I wouldn't
but
have
it's
brought it
also our
up, but it's
detriment.
very relevant to what you're
Yeah. Well, no,
sharing right
and
now.
it's that's so much of our detriment too, and we don't
Yeah,
see those blind spots. I think that's amazing that he mentioned that. But
yeah.
also, yeah, like,
Darshan's on
oh, I
another
love
level.
Jarshawn. Yeah, I love
Like
Jarshawn.
apparently it could get bad though, like really bad too, based on what you ask it over the
Yeah,
years. So I've only been using it
interesting.
7 months, but it
Yeah.
knows a lot about me already.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I ask it weird things. So, like, draw me a labradoodle riding a roller coaster. So I don't know what it would
Oh,
say about me.
really? Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, it's real cool. Yeah. So there's fun things.
But there's type
Um,
A's, like I don't even really consider myself type A, but then my mom tells me like, yeah, you're type A. And then I'm like, okay, I guess. I'm not a perfectionist though, but I still suffered from anxiety, and if I'm not careful, I could creep back into it. And apparently
yeah,
I have, I guess, predisposition to depression because that experience in New York was very foreign to me. Like
yeah.
I know for a fact I can't live in a cold state. Like that
Right.
much I know.
Yeah. No, and it's great.
Mine
Yeah.
when I got it, this was 2012. It was like financial was the trigger,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an unstable period in my business, and I got into debt. And so I've experienced the extreme highs and extreme lows of
Mm-hmm.
site ownership, and it gave me a healthy respect, I believe, for the duality of what we do.
Yeah.
But this was a worst time. And I remember I took out this loan to pay the payroll, and it was one of those loans where every day they take
Oh,
money out of your account. So I would wake up 3 in the morning when the bank would refresh to like
oh
look like what
God.
is it?
Yeah.
Did
What's
they
the damage
pay
today?
us? Yeah,
Yeah.
did the sponsor pay us yet? And there were times where I had to take from my personal savings to put in, and then
Mm-hmm.
that was going low. And it's always like, well, I'm gonna pay myself back. And at some point, it's just like you gotta stop,
Right.
because my wife was working at the time and she was busy. And then I had a business partner who I partnered with a nurse practitioner back then, and sh her son graduated from law school and couldn't get hired because he had issues too. And I inherited like this nasty business partner, not of my
Mm-hmm.
choice.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like threatening me with, do you know what a fiduciary and you can get sued and we put private investigators on people? And so that was on top of it.
Right.
And I was like, fuck, you know what? Like, so when I hit like rock bottom, I worked at a psych clinic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a day where it was unbearable. Like I was just pacing in the house, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I took a half of a Seroquel because they
Mm-hmm.
had samples at the psych
Mm-hmm.
office. So I had them in my backpack. Initially, I had them for my mom
Mm-hmm.
because as a kid, I used to have to like give my mom medicine
Yeah.
when my dad was in residency, and she wouldn't want to take medicine. So I'd have like drops of Risperdal. I would have to like sneak in her drinks and stuff. I think that contributed a lot to like my anxiety as well. But this was later, so I knew how
Mm-hmm.
to self-medicate like from
Yeah.
personal experience. And I never did drugs. I was afraid of that stuff, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, I'm gonna pop a half a Seroquel because it's not really meant for
Right.
anxiety, but I know doctors use it off label. I didn't
Yep.
ask anyone. Shit, I just did it.
You're
This
in
is Dr.
survival.
Dan.
Yeah.
This is Dr. Dan.
You're
Pop
doing
half a
anything you can
Ser.
to survive. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm over there in the sample closet, like the receptionist, like I'm like, oh no, it's for a patient, and I just put them in my backpack, right? And then pop a half, instantly felt better. Like all
Yeah.
the anxiety went away. Like
Mm-hmm.
nothing, like there is
Yeah.
nothing bothering me anymore. But the
That's
next day,
wild. Mm.
I felt the same feelings. I took another half. It didn't work as well. So I had to take a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day I had to take one and a half. And I stopped myself like by day 5 because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm building a tolerance to this and this
Yeah.
is not not the way to do it, but something from that chemical interaction reset my brain to where
Mm,
I was able to gather myself
yeah.
again. And but that was rock bottom.
Hmm.
And the feeling I had was like this endless despair, like not depression, but like just panic mode.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
that just little experience gave me so much empathy. It was financially was the trigger. It wasn't um just to like contrast yours because yours really had nothing to do with finance, from what
Right.
I
But it could be, I mean, it can be something little. Like,
yeah,
you're thinking about everything that you've held on to for so long, and it's that straw that breaks the camel's back. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember the email that broke me. Like, it was
Mm,
a specific email. And at that point, I was like, there's no going back right now. There's no going back.
yeah,
And it was just, I mean, but it like builds on it and builds on it, builds on it. And then all of a sudden, it's just like you hit that. They therapists talk about like your window of tolerance. And so like over time you'll have like this much window where you can this much window where you can work, but over time it can go like smaller and smaller and smaller. And so like as you were building your window of tolerance, like that was opening it up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more.
mm,
And but once you get to that like extreme breaking point of like burnout, and because there's different stages of burnout too. There's some burnout stages that you can easily come back from, or like therapy might work, or medication
yeah,
might work, or whatever it is. But then there's also like that very pit of despair. Like that's the way you
yeah.
described it, pit of despair, where trying to pull yourself out is not, you can't just pull up your bootstraps and put on your big girl panties and keep going. You know what I mean? There's a point where you're like, I, I'm literally working against my brain here. I would love to move forward, but I cannot.
Yeah,
I'm here. And
that's where I
um,
was. I don't recommend,
yeah,
by the way, it's not medical advice. Don't
no,
take
no,
Seroquel out
yeah,
of your
yeah,
house.
no, no.
That shit works, but
Seroquel is
it's not
great.
gonna
Yeah,
work
yeah,
over time. You're gonna,
yeah. Right.
and it makes you gain weight and all kinds of stuff. Like it's not
Absolutely,
really meant for that.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. But it is great. Like whenever I had really bad ruminating thoughts and I couldn't sleep, I was on a low dose of Seroquel, and incredible.
Yeah,
Like I mean, but I'm a big proponent of like going and seeking the help that you need, because
yeah,
this is a medical condition.
yeah,
It's just like diabetes. If you had diabetes, would you say, no, I don't want the insulin?
yeah,
No. Why would you do that? Like
yeah,
you need this. This is mental health is health, and it's
yeah.
so important. And so yeah, that's kind of the background, but that also is what led to me founding CRPM, is really that seeing that across the industry, no matter site, lab, CRO, sponsor, vendor, there was not project management, and there was not like traditional methodologies and processes being used. And in my opinion, this is kind of off different track, but 95% of drugs that make it to clinical trials don't make it to market. That can't just be the science. That has to be the way
Mm,
that we're managing trials, because we do so many years of preclinical studies. But if we look at the way that we're managing our studies, are we doing it appropriately? Are we planning it adequately? Are we evaluating risk? Are we making sure that the protocols are operational? All of these kind of things that could make these drugs that have failed clinical trials actually be something that we need and is effective. But we don't know because the data is bad, because we didn't collect it well, because we didn't plan the study well. So that's part of the mission with why I started this, was because I felt there's so many inefficiencies in our industry, and it's making us chase our tails. So partly that, where we're literally just like fly by the seat of our pants project management, instead of looking at it and like planning it and being proactive rather than reactive,
yeah,
which is harming all of our mental health. But then also focusing it and saying, we can talk about mental health. We can have these
mm,
conversations. We all deal with this. And that's part of the mission with CRPM is, we want people to see clinical research professionals as whole individuals, not productivity engines, because it's so, like we're numbers at big organizations, and you
it's
forget that we're
tragic.
humans. It
The
really
what you
is.
described is
Yeah.
tragic on two levels. Like
Yeah.
there's so many drugs that could have made it that
Yeah.
due to poor planning or maybe a CRO dropped the ball or sites dropping the ball
Right.
collectively, drugs will never make it. I've just
Hmm.
been in a situation like that. And then it's also tragic on the human element of not just the burnout, but the conformity, I think.
Hmm.
Like even the fact that you posted, and people, and a significant number of people said you shouldn't do that. Like that's
Yeah.
conformity.
Yeah.
That's, you ever seen that meme where everyone's different, colorful, unique, and then they walk through a job and they come out looking the same?
Yeah,
Like that's
the
that
black, the
meme.
gray. Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
really is. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's so wild because it's like, and I mean, even I think about it like if I see people complaining about something, right? And I was guilty of it, like you get in that mindset of like, why isn't my site responding? This should be easy, blah, 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 without thinking about the fact that these are humans. This is a
Yeah,
job. They
yeah.
have a whole other life outside of this. And like we can't expect people to work at 100% or 1,000%. And that's kind of how our industry's gone the last few years, having them work at that level and not taking care of our people. And which it's so ironic that we're killing ourselves in the process of saving lives.
Yeah, and these are literally first world problems.
Literally.
Because
Yeah.
and the other developing nations that are starting to get, like Mexico, I'm talking to you, Latin America, like, the culture there is like family,
Yeah.
fun. Now they're starting to tighten up. They're getting more work out there.
Yeah.
You can predict the future there. Like if you look at Korea,
Mhm.
places like that where productivity is everything, you see
Right.
burnout, you see suicide rates, depression.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
these are first world problems. You don't see
Yeah.
this in third world nation. They have their own problems, but
Right. And is it
these are
ego? You know what I
self-inflicted
mean?
problems.
Like, yeah. And then, like, if you hear it too, like, you hear people talk about it, and people are like, oh, I should be able to do this. Or people even saying to others, well, this person can do this, or so and
Yeah,
so has no
yeah.
issue with this workload. That's not the point. That is not the
Mm.
point. Everybody's different. Everybody's going through different things. Everybody has
You
different
think
life
AI is gonna help,
experiences.
like put an end to this?
I mean, I don't, I think conversations and
Yeah.
everything are going to put an end to it. Like, I think that I don't, I mean, AI, of course, is going to help in some ways, and I love that the whole like therapy thing. You can get free therapy with AI, but I think
I
it's
didn't
human
realize that
connection.
until yesterday.
Yeah, I did hear about that. Like, I've heard
Yeah,
cool things. I've never looked at the blind spot, so I'm gonna have to look at that.
yeah.
But I think it's human connection. Like, we can't expect people to be productive 24/7. That's not their whole lives, and that's not a
Mhm.
life to live. You know what I mean? Like, why are
Yeah.
we doing that? And it's not making us, our quality is hindered by that, by overworking. And is that part of the problem about our industry? Are we literally just, because I mean, if you think about it, removing resources and staffing and everything, how many drugs have failed because because of staffing? Put $1 billion into a
Yeah.
drug to make it to market. I think the average is $1 billion to make it from concept to market. You're putting that much money into it, and you're cutting the teams that need to make this successful. What a horrible business model. Put the money in it to make sure it's managed correctly, and then you're not wasting $1 billion. If you invest $1 million more and make it more successful, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you give your teams the resources and the training that you need to make sure that your study is successful and is not part of that
I don't
95%?
think it's money either. I think the answer is there's not enough capable people.
I don't know though, because like if you look at study teams and stuff, they decrease, like they cut and cut, like we
Yeah.
had talked earlier, lean. I feel like companies say
Mm.
we're going lean. And that for them, whatever means this, I mean, this is one of my many soapboxes, but they say lean and they take it as cutting the workforce. That's not what lean means. Lean means cutting the processes to make it smoother. Our industry cuts the people, makes the processes worse,
Yeah.
or cuts the people, introduces more technology, and then we need more people to manage that technology, but we don't have those resources.
Or what's happening? Look, Mexico City was eye-opening. I went in January this year. I went
Hmm.
to meet a few peeps from Guru Nation. It looks like Research Triangle Park in certain parts of it. Like
Mm.
every CRO's there. Every, not
Wow.
some, every, every
Yeah.
sponsor's there, like all the big ones. They're
Hmm.
all there. The people speak perfect English. They're in the same
Yeah.
time zones. They get paid one-fifth of the cost. So when they're
Yeah.
outsourcing, they're gonna eventually have the same issues we're having. They just don't
Well,
know it yet.
yeah. And I mean, like, yeah, that's been such a frustrating part of our industry right now, too, is outsourcing to cheaper countries.
Yeah, yeah,
Because how are you going to have a country manager that's not in your country? I find that
I
so
know.
ironic.
Yeah.
I'm like, you have these people, like, they're cutting costs in stupid areas. They're
The
cutting
payment
costs
people
where,
are already all in Europe or
yeah,
Mexico.
yeah. But I mean, like, but they're cutting the costs on quality. What they're
Yeah.
cutting here, so they're cutting US employees to save money, but
Hmm.
you're taking away the quality and the experience and everything else there. So a short-term gain is a long-term loss in this because
Yeah.
you
But
have
the
people.
sad part is though, just like
Hmm.
I mean, I'm with you and I don't think you should sacrifice your mental or physical health for any job or career.
Yeah,
But the argument from the people in the ivory towers is, well, the people in Mexico work harder and they don't complain. You know, they because they don't complain yet because they haven't been burnt out yet.
yeah,
This is just
right.
like 10 years away over there.
Well, and you know what I want to ask them? Why do you need $30 million and why can't you just keep your staff in the country?
Or why not
Like,
add those people there to supplement the
right,
ones here or work with the
or
ones here?
something. Like,
Yeah,
but why are you cutting people who have 20 years of experience for people who are right out of just because it saves money? That's
yeah.
not going to help your drugs get to market. And like, I just find that so ironic. Like, you're
Well, and the
looking
mental
at,
illness thing is gonna get worse here too, because not just
yeah,
burnout, but the layoffs now. Like you're
right.
seeing,
So then
I'm
you have the
getting
financial
messages.
side. Yeah,
Yeah, which is what
exactly.
that's where
Right.
I resonated with. I never
Yeah.
actually got anxiety from burnout. I'm not sure if I ever was burnt out. I mean, I gave myself hypertension in my early 20s, so I probably did.
Hmm.
But anxiety wise, not really till
Yeah.
the financial issues started.
Right.
And I know a lot of people going through that right now because I get the messages and I don't really know what to tell them other than network, don't isolate yourself, go to ACRP local meetups,
Right.
just do what you can, talk to people like Jess, there's a good handful of people like you out there that
Yeah.
I refer them to, but
Hmm.
it's serious stuff. It's not just the
Yeah.
burnout too.
Right. It's the networking. Again, human connection. I feel like that's so important and relationships and especially in our industry, you know what I mean? Like finding a job or seeing what's happening with just all these different things that we need and the support. You know what I mean? These ACRP events, these conferences, those are some of my favorite parts to go is because I get reinvigorated. I remember why I'm doing this because we all work remotely
Mm,
and thankfully like some people get to go into the site or see why, but the people who are only at their computers, you forget your why. And you really just
yeah,
need to have that open communication across the industry, not just in our little silos. It doesn't need to be sites talking to sites, CROs talking to CROs. It needs to be everybody talking about it because then we also really get that empathy for each other too. I've been really lucky that I've seen clinical research from site lab sponsor CRO where most people don't have that experience. So they don't understand what a site's going through. They don't understand what the lab processing looks like. They don't understand what the sponsor's dealing with. You know what I mean? And so you get really in these silos where you're like, oh, this person's horrible and they're asking crazy things, but without recognizing all the craziness that's going on there too. And if we
yeah,
just had that conversation, and I tell that people to people all the time, if you're a sponsor of CRO, you're not getting information from the site, change your approach. Tell them why you need it. Uh, Talk to them about it. Talk to them about why it's not getting in. Talk to them, see what's happening. It's not you versus them. It's a teamwork. And like, why aren't we, again, this is
yeah.
all like basic communication. Like, in my opinion, the reason that our stuff is failing is not science. It's the people skills, it's the soft skills, it's working together, it's understanding how to manage a study,
It really is.
planning, you know what I mean? And it's not the
It's
science.
not the
It's
science. I've seen a
no.
very good drug die, and it was
Yeah.
tragic again
Yes.
recently. Like
Yeah.
this thing changed the patients' lives in our site. I was like,
Right.
this is amazing. I got my hands on some from the sponsor and used it on myself and families, and everyone's like, this is amazing. I say, yeah, the tragic thing is it'll never get approved. Like this company's bankrupt because some processes were not followed where it required basically soft skills to figure it out beforehand, like
Right.
to be proactive, and no one
Hmm.
did.
Yep. Yeah. And that's so scary. Think about I mean, I even think about it of like, is the cure for cancer somewhere in one of these studies that didn't make it past phase 1 because we did not plan well?
Yeah,
Because we didn't think
very
about
likely.
if it's operational. We didn't have those conversations. It was just the protocol, the medical writer or the clinical scientist writing that protocol, but hasn't worked at a site, don't know how to operationalize it. And then all, just all the things. Like communication can go
Hmm.
so far.
Soft skills in humans, because this drug I'm talking about, critics might listen and say, "Oh, no, that's bullshit, Dan. If it's that good, cream rises to the top." Not when the founder and the patent owner, this is a human element again, refuses to sell it and would rather have it die with him.
Right.
So it becomes more psychology, more soft skill.
Ego.
Yeah,
All ego.
yeah,
And yeah, and not being in this for the right reasons.
yeah.
Why? Why in the world would you do that? And that's one drug. You can think,
Ego.
I mean, I feel like most of us who've been in the industry for a while, we all have a story like that where we're like, we knew what patients were on placebo versus other ones,
Yeah.
and it was just poor whatever, poor planning, poor
And
management,
this one,
poor
I saw the
whatever.
patients crying at the last visit.
Ugh.
Like, where do we get this?
And then to know that it's not going to come.
Yeah.
And
We
because of
didn't know
what?
it back then, so we were like,
Yeah.
hopefully it's approved in a year. At least you know it works.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, I can't wait. And then like months later, you're like, oh shit, it's
Yeah.
never
Not going
coming out.
anywhere. Ugh. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
not good. Yeah.
No. And then seeing those same patients in another study asking
Right. And
about
not
it.
getting,
You're like, how much time you got? We don't got time for all that.
right. And
We
think about
got
how much money was lost. Like, not, I
a good
mean,
amount, a good
right.
amount.
It had to have been. Like, if you've gone through the work of all the preclinical testing and phase 1 and phase 2, and you're getting into phase 3, that is so much money.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
when a drug fails at phase 3, it hurts my soul because it's made it so far.
Yeah, that was what it was.
Like, it's made it so far. At that point, it has to be the way that we're managing our studies because that is such a bigger population. We don't know how to operationalize it. We don't know what to do with timelines, budgets, all of that kind of stuff. We don't know how to manage the stakeholders. There's just so much there that if we just adequately managed and planned and were proactive, we could do so much better.
One of the things I preach as an antidote to all this stuff is mainly the burnout and being at the mercy of. I feel like the burnout stems, if we get into some philosophy here, from a lack of control, that, or at least a feeling of that you don't have
Mm,
control. And that often is obvious if you're working for someone. Like if your job's stressing you out and you're working for someone else, you're literally depending on someone else to improve your situation. So I
right.
always advocate for like self-employment, but I don't know if that's necessarily good advice because I know not everyone is built for that. But at the same
Right.
time, the economy is pointing in that direction. So everyone kind of has to get good at that. Like there's also like individual responsibility here. It's not just victimhood.
100%. Oh, absolutely. 100%.
But I don't know
Because you
where's
have
that
to do what you need
balance
to do,
because
right?
everyone's
You need
different.
Absolutely. And you have to take care of yourself. Like any way you look at this, nobody can operate at that level for that long. And what really helped me was like sitting down and thinking through what my core values are. What is important to me? Because if if I if if you came out one day, like if you were at a corporation and something happened to you and you were no longer there and they would replace you the next day, but your family would not
Yeah,
be able to do that.
right.
And so realigning my core values with my life were that was a big thing. And like when you're out of that alignment and like especially when it's like your morals and everything and you're being asked to do things and it could be things like working really long whenever on Wednesday night you have game night with your family. That's going against your core values. So when you're not in alignment with your core values, you're already kind of dysregulated. You're
Mm,
already not in the right space that you need to be because you're working outside of
yes.
what you are. And so I think that's first and foremost the first thing that you think about. And that's kind of how I've started to combat this in my own life, especially owning a business, because it's so easy, as you know, to get so engrossed in the business. You're super passionate about it. You want to do all these amazing things and you want to do them all at the same time. But then you have to like take a step back. And I always do like seasonal check ins, like every quarter, look at my life. What does my daily life look like? And what am I enjoying this? Am I just doing this to like hopefully pay the bills one day? Am I in this for the right reasons? Am I taking care of myself? Am I being intentional with my relationships? Because those are the things that mean the most to me. My integrity, my authenticity, and my family. And if I'm not in alignment in those three areas, something that feels off in my head already because those are my core values. So
Hmm.
looking at your core values and seeing if your schedule aligns and the way you're spending your time is a great way to start saying, am I on a path of destruction? Am I starting out on this path where I'm not filling my cup? I'm not being around people who are filling my cup. I'm just giving, giving, giving. Because at some point, you're not going to be able to give anymore. And your body's going to shut down because of that. But it can be small little things like that. Like, I don't operate well when I have meetings back to back to back to back to back all day, but I had to look and see what that was in my life and have that review of that season of my life to say, okay, this is where I'm feeling a lot of the stress. These are the days. So even journaling, how are you feeling today? It, beginning work, end of work. How did you start your
Hmm.
morning? What's energizing you today? What's taking away your energy today? What was the best part? What was the worst part? Little check-ins like that can really help you start to identify, okay, this is what's sucking the life out of me. I'm
Yeah.
putting so much time and energy here and it doesn't matter. Like, can I delegate? Is there something that actually doesn't need me? And then I could use my time to be something more of a core value for me. Like if I delegate this task out, would I be able to have dinner with my family tonight?
Yeah.
And starting to think about it in that way of instead of it being monetary, because that's what I used to do. I was so bad about like a type A, right? Every hobby I had, I wanted to monetize because that's how it was. And having to take
Sounds like
that
me
list,
back in the day too.
yeah. And it's such a recipe for burnout.
Yeah.
And having to then be like, no, this is a hobby that's filling my cup. It's not being productive. But just recognizing those things and saying, like having that evaluation with yourself. But it took me literally breaking, completely breaking to get to that point.
Wow. On that topic, there's a really good book I just
Ooh.
read. It's called After Virtue by a
Ooh,
philosopher that McIntyre, he passed away, but
okay.
uh basically, and I used to do this too, and wasn't until my 40s, which is just a few years ago, I stopped chasing monetizing everything. And the
Yeah.
ironic thing is you make more when you stop. And he
Yes.
broke it down. I always knew, okay, I heard this cliche, now I experienced it, but this guy articulated it. If you chase external rewards, you eventually get burned out because you don't have a
Mhm.
purpose. So you need to find internal rewards
Yeah.
for yourself. Like, well, what's the internal reward? And it's not money because money's an external reward, but why are
Mm,
you doing what you do in the first place? It's
right.
usually like higher value things than money. Money's
Hmm.
important because the lack of it just put me through my
Right.
own attack, right? But
Right.
not more money is not the answer. Like, it's not gonna make me
Right.
feel better. It doesn't
Hmm.
work that way. So it's internal rewards. How many people have I helped? Like my employees.
Yeah.
I'm helping them grow their careers. I'm not there to extract their time for money. Like we're making money, but I really care if you're not happy, like you go somewhere else, you in 10 years, you tell me like you're happy at your job or whatever, you've advanced. Those are like internal rewards. Same thing with the
Hmm.
videos. How many people that I never will meet will I be able to
Right.
help? And just every now and then getting a message, okay, boom. But the
Hmm.
ironic thing is, if you focus on that, the external rewards come
Yeah.
faster and you don't need to
Because
worry
you're in
about it.
alignment. You're in
Yeah,
alignment.
yeah.
And like you're in alignment with your morals and your values because you're like me. Like my morals aren't just to make money. That's not my values. My values are to help and be, a positive light in this industry
Yeah.
for, you know what I mean? It's not about the money, but me, when I was focusing more on that, that wasn't in alignment. So as I've kind of stepped back, like for me, yoga, I will never charge
Mm.
people for yoga. I do it for myself. I volunteer with it. I'll do it for CRPM. I'll do it for
Ah,
conferences, whatever. But I don't want to charge money for it because then it's a job. Then I'm monetizing it no matter what, because then my what I take and what I use for my personal healing and reflection and everything is then flawed. It's like it's taken away from me. So there's some things like I refuse like, but I would have tried to do that had I not had that realization of like, no, this is something that you want to utilize to help people in this way, not to make money off of.
Mm,
And you need to keep that because that's healing you. That is giving you more than money ever could because you know how much it's helped you, and passing that forward provides so much more than money ever could in that way. And just recognizing that exchange of time. That's why some of the self-help books where it's like time is money, I don't like that. I don't like it at all because
yeah.
I lived that life. Time is money. I worked all the freaking time. And what did it get me? It landed me in a mental health hospital
Yeah.
and ready to commit suicide. That's not okay.
Yeah.
Why? If I have money and I don't have a life to live, why do I care? And just having that reevaluation, it's really helped me. And that's honestly CRPM, and the mission behind CRPM has been so healing for me because I can take what happened and my experiences and help people see that there's a different way and to recognize those warning signs and that there is a process. Like if you do get to that spot, you could ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. I'll help
Mhm.
you find the resources. A lot of the insurance companies are incredible. They'll help you find all the resources you need, but not being in that alignment and not and just focusing only on achieving, achieving, achieving without really thinking about the human aspect and connecting and all of that is beautiful about our industry. I feel like a lot of people have lost that in the industry. It's only been about money, and
Yeah.
we're taking away so much about the human connection with our patients, with each other, with why we're here. We're here to help. We're not here to make a lot of money. We're here to help. What got you in the industry? We're here to help. We're here to find cures. We're here to find answers and but not kill ourselves in the process
Yeah,
and
we're
take
here to
care of
find
ourselves.
cures while killing ourselves in the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like so ironic. Like we're here and like it's just so ironic. And same, I feel the same way about like project management, right? Like
Yeah.
the way we manage our study, we're literally doing crazy, amazing science. And then the way that we manage our studies is so archaic. Like we
Yeah.
just have to we have to come together with all of these things and all
But
these
do you think like
resources
self-reliance, like what you did, do you think anyone can do that? Like it can be learned?
for I think
Like
I
going
mean
solo, like being on your own.
Oh, if you have the drive. I think it depends on the person, right? Some people want to work for somebody the rest of their life. Somebody doesn't want to figure out how to get insurance outside of a
Yeah.
W-2 position.
Yeah.
That's daunting, even starting up, right? It's so hard. But I think for the right reasons, it's super important. And I always tell people, the worst that can happen is you go back to where you were. If you try it and it doesn't
Mm.
work, go back to what you were doing. But
Yeah.
if you have any kind of thought of like wanting to go on your own, wanting to consult, wanting to follow this passion and a mission that you have for yourself and whatever industry you're in, try it. The worst that can happen is you go back to where you were. And I feel that way
Yeah.
about like everything, move, changing jobs, all those kind of things. Like don't burn any bridges, but if it's not what you want it to be, what changes? Right? Because that's
Yeah.
how I kind of took it was worst case, CRPM doesn't work out. I go back to managing studies. That's the worst that can happen.
Just to meet your bare needs
Just
living.
maybe I'm not, maybe business isn't for me. You know what I mean? Like, but at least I
I
tried
have a
it.
friend, I have a friend who I won't put him on blast, but he's pretty high level now at some sponsors. And he used to work at Ciro's and he said, I will drive for Uber before I go back to a Sierra. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
his,
Yeah.
line in the sand. Like he's not gonna do that.
Yeah. And that's fair. I think that we all have so many different experiences. Some people love it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it's all about personal experiences and what works for each individual.
right.
The right job is not going to be right for everybody. Your right job is different than my right job.
Yeah.
And, but you have to do what's
There's
best for
this
you.
thing once you've been in business. I've never worked for anyone else outside of a contract gig here and there for some CROs, small CROs. I think you get spoiled. If you can make it work, because it's very difficult too. Like I've gone through some
Hmm.
shit more than I'm saying here, but once you get over it and like okay, that's the rock bottom. I'm not going back there ever, or like whatever I can do, you get smarter. For me, it would be impossible to go work for someone else unless they were like very similar to me and had similar values, because I just couldn't do that. And once you realize how much money you can make if you focus on the right things and start like everything clicks.
Hmm.
like a salary, when I hear people telling me like I'm afraid to leave because this is my salary, I'm like, do you realize like if you owned a site, which they usually want to do, you can make that with one study. You don't even need to hire a coordinator. Like that's just you doing
And
it.
it's funny you say that because owning a site sounds like my worst nightmare. Y'all do so
I
much.
don't
Like
know
y'all
if it
do
would be.
so much. I don't think I could do it.
I
Like
think
it's
you
so
could.
funny. Well, so it's so funny though because like, but that's what you love. I could not. Oh my God, it
I
would be
don't know.
horrific for me. You know what I mean? Like it's, but like things that people, it's so interesting to
Maybe,
see. Like
maybe.
like this is. It's so you're passionate about this, and then for me, literally owning a site, I think is my worst nightmare
I think you can
because
do it. Do you think you still would have like flashbacks to the PTSD
no,
thing?
and it's
No.
not even that. Like for me, I think it's because, and it's not about the job. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the job.
Yeah.
It has to do with what I've found that I love about what I do. I love
Mm.
mentoring. I love training. I love being able to make things fun when they're not. You know what I mean? I like to be able to do that.
Personal challenge accepted, Jess. We'll try to
Yeah.
get you a site owner at some point.
Oh God,
You
no,
can
I
do
don't think so.
mentoring, you can do training.
Oh no,
They're called
I don't. Mm.
employees.
I know, but I
And
love
they're
our
like
sites.
kids at some
Mm.
point.
But
Like,
I truly believe site, and again, this is my experience in the industry.
yeah.
Sites have the hardest job out of any other job. Sites are the worst. That's why I would
Uh,
never, and I, no, you're amazing at it, and so many people are amazing at it. But I think I don't have the boundaries with myself to be a site owner. Yeah.
that's different. You no, you
Hmm.
can delegate. Listen, never close the window. I've
Oh, no, no,
done
no. Yeah.
contract CRA
Yeah.
work. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, that's harder. That's
See,
harder
but
and more
that's my
stressful.
personality. See, I like
Ah,
it's all about the personalities, right? Like
yeah.
I love auditing. I love
Oh, you
consulting. I
like
love
that.
all of the, oh
Okay.
yeah, I worked regulatory. That was
I
my
hate
bread
that.
and butter. Like I probably have paper cut scars from all my years of auditing. Like
Are you an ENFP or what's your personality?
INTJ.
Ah,
Yeah.
you're complete opposite of me, every letter.
What are you?
ENFP.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like we would be like perfect business partners.
Yeah. Because you would bring all the other stuff and
You're
I'm
Chris
the
Sauber.
mastermind.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're Chris Sauber. Wow.
So
And you were on a
yeah.
panel with Chris, no? At
Yeah, yeah.
SOS. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, we wore the wigs. He
Yeah,
was
you
not
are
happy.
Chris Sauber. That is his exact letter type too.
That's too funny. Yeah.
Interesting. I would have
Yeah.
guessed E for sure.
It's just the recharge. So
Mm,
like my recharge has to be alone. And
mm,
but I'm fine out in public and everything, but my recharge is introverted. So
gotcha.
yeah. But
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe not. Well, I still think you could, but it's okay.
Oh no, I probably could, but I would hate it. You know what I mean? It's one of those
Okay.
things.
Okay.
Like there's a difference in can do and want to do. I don't want to do it.
Do you like managing your own business though?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's why I didn't go nonprofit, especially starting out. And because
I
I've
see.
gotten some kind of interesting takes from people on it. And I'm very honest about it. I'm not deceiving anybody. The only reason I'm not nonprofit is because had a vision and I wanted to execute my vision. And with a nonprofit, I would have had to report to a board. I would
Oh
have
yeah,
had to do all these
nonprofit
kind
pain
of
in the
things.
ass. It's
Exactly.
pain
And
in
I
the
don't
ass.
want to do that. Especially coming out of that level of burnout and having the experiences I had, I didn't want my vision to be tarnished because people were scared to talk about mental health. And they had
Mm.
been for so long. This was 2 years ago that people weren't talking about mental health. And to see how much our industry's even
In
changed
our
in those
industry,
two
yeah, you had a
years,
lot to do with it.
and just having that conversation. And now, like, I love the fact that, like, Fort Kindness or
Yeah.
Magi let us talk about mental health, and BWICR talks about mental health at their conferences. And I just love that now it's a conversation. It's not taboo. But had I gone the nonprofit route, I probably wouldn't have been able to talk about it. I didn't want to be hindered about what I could say online I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to be genuine. And that's just
Hmm.
because if I'm not in alignment with those core values, then my life is off balance. And I'm a firm believer in that now. And so I try everything I do, I really try to focus on authenticity and being genuine. And
Yeah. A
because
lot of
that's how I
people,
lead.
hopefully the people are still with us here, if there are any skeptics left, because I used to be this. They listen to us and they're like, yeah, that's nice. It's because you guys already make money. and you have the luxury to try to reach higher ideals. But when you don't have money, like, you do what you got to do
Mhm.
to make it, right?
Yeah,
And is your lifestyle congruent with sustainable business? Those
yeah,
are what the skeptics are going to say.
sure. But there's a book called 2 Weeks Notice. Have you read it?
Nah, not that one.
Okay.
I
You and
haven't
I,
even heard of that one.
we need to trade
Yeah,
exchange
yeah, we
books because
definitely do.
it's really cool. So 2 Weeks Notice talks about how, and I kind of did this. Unintentionally I did this because I was training project management on my teams, at conferences, all of that kind of stuff. So I was building my runway without even knowing I was building my runway. So I had started to see if there was going to be any kind of, for me, was this something that people were going to be interested in? Were people interested in having these conversations and talking about mental health, but also talking about project management? Is that something that we wanted? Because we don't talk about project management in this industry much. We don't really, all of the certifications that are clinical research specific for project management talk about GCP, not about how to manage your studies. And that it was a risk. Of course, it was a risk, right? But I had started to kind of go in that direction and I knew a change had to happen. So I honestly don't know if I would have ever pursued entrepreneurial life if I had not hit rock bottom.
Mm,
And it's wild to say that because I loved the W-2 life. I loved it. Didn't have to, I knew my hours, I knew my tasks, but not living in alignment with my morals was really hard for me. And so hitting that rock bottom space, I had to say, if I'm staying in this industry, because I almost didn't, I almost left this industry in 2022
what
because I
would
was
you
like,
have
I
done?
can't do
Full-time
this.
yoga teacher or
No, I have no idea. I
yes.
honestly, but I was ready. I was at the point in my career and in my mental health where I was ready to
Wow.
walk away and start over. And I had been in the industry for 12, 13 years at that time. And
Wow.
I was a project manager and everything. Like I had essentially achieved the dream goal. Like I
Hmm.
said, when I wanted to be a project manager at a sponsor, at a pharmaceutical company,
Level
I
two.
achieved it.
Project manager
And
level two.
but I achieved it and it was not what I wanted. And I think that's something we don't talk about too, is like when you reach your ultimate goal and it's not what you thought it was going to be, you kind of
Yeah,
grieve that.
that's a
And
letdown.
yeah, I've been working my entire career to get to this point, and then that job almost killed me. And what a like
That
mind
like shakes your
F, right?
foundation of
Like,
like your
yeah,
framework. Because when that
exactly.
happens, you've got to reassess who you are, which is scary, and most people
Right,
are not willing to do that because they don't
right.
want to admit they were wrong,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
wasted whatever 10 years. But in your case,
right.
it's never a waste because that
No.
made you who you are today,
Exactly. And
and
it led me to my mission and my passion. And so I think it depends really on the person. Like some people are just entrepreneurial spirits and that's their goal. They want to do that. For me, it really was this is the only way I'm going to be able to stay in this industry right now. Because I was
mm,
at that point, I could only do the things that were bringing me joy. I needed to
mm.
focus only on those things, or I was not going to be in this industry anymore because I was too burnt out.
So one of the things you said that's to me is crazy because I've never been a W-2.
Uh-huh.
You liked that life
Yeah.
because you liked to have boundaries. You like to know when your work is done.
Hmm.
You basically wanted a normal work-life balance.
Yeah.
Ironically, you did not get that in a
Right.
W-2, which is supposed to be the benefit of, or one of the benefits of having that is stability, and it's not your responsibility. Like the whole business is not your responsibility.
Right.
But you did not achieve that in a
Right.
W-2, but you're able to achieve that working for yourself, which is supposed to be way more stressful than being a W-2.
Look, it has been a lot of therapy to get to the point where it is getting to that point now. You know what I mean? Because it still was that. And I did
Mm,
burn myself out my first year because I jumped in and I was just trying to find my passion again. And so 2023, I started CRPM
mm,
and I spoke at a lot of conferences last year and I got so burnt out. And I recognized, so I knew that my work style, my personality, all of that was probably the main reason that all of this happened, right? But I was also in an industry that thrives on people like me. So it was one of those things that I had to take a step back. Like you just said, I had to take a step back and say, what am I doing that is setting myself up for failure? What is not serving me anymore? And it really was that. Like I had to then pivot again of like, what actually matters, what is in alignment with my goals, not just like a great idea right now and I want to do it. What can I table? What is going to, because you know how this goes. Like you have this great idea and you're like, oh my God, I want to do that right now. And in reality, it needs to be 2 years from now. You know it, everybody
Yep.
knows it, but you're like, oh, I just want to do this. And
I got
so
a couple of those right now.
yeah, and like just having that like self-awareness and self-control and those boundaries of, and that's why I think for me with sites, because I would see the patients. I can set more boundaries with myself when I'm not feeling obligated to those patients that are right there.
I see.
And but that's in my state right now, right? Like where I'm
Hmm.
still kind of trying to learn how to be a business owner, how to manage my priorities, how to manage my mental health. Um, so I think it depends on the people. I really
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
but for me, it was so healing. But it's interesting that like my trajectory has been more, again, this change where it was more, not as much monetary. It was how do I get my core values in alignment and find passion for life again? And that's
yeah,
what CRPM's provided for me. And I know that financially it'll come or it won't, but I at least am healing this side of myself that I couldn't have done any other way.
yeah. No, I think it's the journey is incredible. You're doing a lot to help others too through your posts.
Thank you.
And when I get into like one thing I always keep in mind is the Stoics. I'm gonna drop an article on my newsletter Saturday about
Yeah,
Stoicism. But the Stoics, said we're a drop in the ocean. Like you're gonna die is the bottom line. Whether you figure this shit
right,
out or not,
right.
whether you broke or rich, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter. If you're lucky, you'll die like around 80, maybe later,
Right,
if you're lucky. So what are you gonna do given all that? Like you've got to figure it out. You got to do something. You
right.
know,
Yeah,
you're here to live. You're alive, and you're one day not gonna be.
right.
That's what it boils down to.
Well, and I mean, if you think like our lives are so much of our life is taken up by work. And if you're
Yeah,
not happy in your work, that's a
exactly.
huge part of your life you're not happy in.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
even if you're successful,
right. It
because
doesn't,
what's
yeah,
the
success.
purpose of success
You're
if
right.
it's not doing anything for you?
And what's the definition of success at that point, right? If
Yeah,
you hate your life every day,
yeah,
that's not success for me. And even defining success, that was something I needed to do too, was okay, what does being successful mean to me? It's not money
mm-mm.
necessarily. It's being comfortable and having freedom and being able to, which that for me, entrepreneurial life is so nice to be able to work remotely. Or if I need to go to a doctor's appointment, I can go to a doctor's appointment and not worry about
Yeah,
having to be on another meeting because I saw that personally, like how it affected my health. And, just little things like that, like that the entrepreneurial, and maybe that's something that I know you talk about it a lot too, how to shift from that. Like, and I like that book, 2 Weeks Notice for that, how to shift from that W-2 position and building yourself that runway to have the space to be although it's going to suck for a couple months working both, but when you transition over, you'll have that groundwork laid out and it won't be as scary because you've already kind of done that t test to see if it's even going to be something that might be successful for you. But I feel like I'm a big
yeah.
proponent of if you follow your passion, you're going to be successful and it may not be monetarily, but you'll feel the success for yourself
You
in that
definitely
way.
will. And you have to define what your version of the good life is, because I think ultimately that's the philosophy you should try to live, and not
Yeah,
the good life in someone else's eyes or what society says, but
right, right.
what you're on. Because if you don't like it, what's the point?
Right. Yeah. And what,
Yeah,
okay, like for me, so I wasn't doing anything throughout COVID, right? All I was doing was working. So I saved all my money, all my money, all my money. I was making good money, right? But then I was working so much I couldn't enjoy the money.
yeah,
All I did was work.
yeah,
And so I'm like,
yeah,
well, what kind of life is this if I'm making money and I'm chasing money, but I can't use the money because
yeah,
all I'm doing is working.
yeah.
And so that was kind of a weird revelation for me of like, and also, what's the money good for me if I'm dead? And
Yeah,
it got to that
seriously.
point, like
Yeah.
where didn't want to live moment to moment. And it was just not worth it. It just wasn't worth it. And so that's why I'm such a
Mm,
big proponent of like recognizing those warning signs from when you start to feel them, where you feel anxiety, where or depression or whatever it is. Like, and again, our industry is made of type A individuals, so we're all predisposed to this fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know so many like rich people that are miserable, and I think
Right.
there's to enjoy the money, you have to have struggle, because
Hmm.
then you have something to contrast your luxury with, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, I know what it feels like to struggle, so now I'm enjoying this more. But those people
Right.
that don't have the struggle, they don't actually enjoy it. Like, you ever go to like Four Seasons or like resorts and you're having a good time because that's not normal for you, but then you see like these trust fund kids going there and they're like doing drugs. They don't even know what the hell's going on, and just
Or
because they're
complaining
numbing
about the
themselves.
silliest things.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh yeah, like so crazy. I'm just
yeah,
like you're complaining about this napkin and you're sitting in paradise. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah. It's because I
yeah.
think that duality is in all of us of like problem solving is human, and like to explore the unknown is human, but too much
Hmm.
of that it causes anxiety. And
Hmm.
so you have to have like this balance, and you kind of have to flirt with danger in order to have some
Right.
success.
And that's the only way to grow, too. You have to kind of push those limits, but then recognizing when the limit is detrimental or when it's growth. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like having that. Oh, my therapist put it so great. So it's like stretching. You know, when you stretch and you start to feel a little bit of pain, but you're like, I can go a little deeper and it's not going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
Doing that professionally is also how you could do it, where you start to feel uncomfortable, but it's not going to cause pain. You know what I mean? So
Mm,
living in that little bit of area of discomfort is good
mm.
sometimes,
That
but not to
tension,
the point.
having a
Yeah,
little tension.
yeah, but you have to also release it some too. Like you
Yeah.
can't just stay in that stretch
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you can't go too deep in the stretch or you might pull a
Yeah.
muscle.
That's
And so
true.
thinking about it of that perspective of, and so that's what I try to think about professionally now. Is this a stretch or is
Yeah.
this going to harm me?
Yeah.
And trying to think of use my mind as the muscle that I would be if I was stretching, doing yoga, anything like that. But
Yeah.
also if I am stretching myself, doing the same thing I
Ooh.
would in
Okay.
that moment of like, okay, if I'm stretching, send the breath to it. It's painful, it's uncomfortable. Send your breath to it. Ground yourself and say, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. But I'm going to grow from this experience. It's not going to harm me
Mm.
indefinitely.
The
Because then
struggle.
if you, yeah, because then if you think about it, right, if you stretch too much and you pull a muscle, you're going to have to recover for 2 weeks. Same thing with your mental health,
All right,
where if
one
you
more
just
book
push
for
a
you.
little, yeah.
Meditations on the Tarot. The
Oh,
first tarot card is the Magician,
uh-huh.
and he blends work with play. And
Ooh,
I'm not religious, but
yeah.
even the Bible says you need the heart of a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. And
Yes.
kids are never working, but you
Yeah.
give them something like to them it's work. They're solving problems, but they're
Yep.
having fun while doing it. And we
Yeah.
lose that because we're chasing things and we think society needs us to do this, so we go do
Hmm.
that and we lose that. And
Yeah.
I think that's the deeper meaning of that Bible verse.
Yeah.
Only the heart of a child can, he with the heart of a child can enter the kingdom of heaven. It's constantly playing and
Right.
blending the work with play to where you can't tell the difference. That's when you hit
Yep.
the spot. And I'm
Yeah.
not there all the time, but I'm
Hmm.
trying to get there
Yeah.
over
And that's
time.
what yeah. And I mean, you see the way that I present at conferences. I try, like,
Yeah.
I mean, at SOS, I wore a powdered wig, or
You
like we did a whole
exemplify
Barbie
that.
thing.
That's why I
And
brought it up.
yeah, because it's just so like, and like, especially with presentations and stuff. So, I mean, I had gone to another industry, long story. We're talking about doing a cruise on a conference or a conference on a cruise ship. And so
That
I went
was
to
you, right? I
yeah,
heard
yeah.
about
And
that.
so we're still working on it, but I went to a cruise line industry conference last year or 2023,
I
and it
saw
was
the pictures.
so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are we doing in clinical research? What in the heck are we doing? And so from that moment, I was like,
Wow.
from now on, if they allow me creative freedom, I'm going to make it fun.
Yeah.
Because we all do the same thing. We all talk on this, like, we all see the same slides, whatever. So, like, we wore powdered wigs and made it to like because we were doing like a courtroom style thing for SOS if people didn't attend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And jokingly, Edie and I are like, we should wear powdered wigs. But it was the end of the day. It was what people needed to be like, wait, I'm gonna listen to this one because this is just so off the wall. And it's been so cool to see like conferences doing that more of
Yeah.
like,
Even
having,
Chris wore a wig.
yeah, I
Brad,
love it. I know.
Brad
Oh
with the
yeah, Chris
judge.
was not happy
By the
about
way,
that.
Edie killed it. She defended paper, and I know she doesn't like paper, and it almost made me convert from e-stars to paper. The
I
way
told
Edie
her,
got
yeah,
down,
uh-huh.
whoa.
Yeah, I told her, I was like, if I'm, because she's an actual attorney. I was
Yeah,
like, if we're doing this law thing, I can't argue paper because I already am struggling with being a lawyer. Like, I can't do the paper part, but she did a great job. And she's
she
all about
killed it.
everything. So I'm like, you are absolutely a fantastic attorney because you argued something that you typically
Killed
don't
it.
argue, and it was really cool. But so those kind of things. And the wig definitely went to everybody's heads. So,
We have the
that was a good
audio.
time.
We have the audio, unfortunately, not video.
We have pictures.
Yeah, we have
Uh-huh. Yeah.
pictures. We have
hmm
proof.
So yeah, Chris didn't want that picture, but we did it.
Yeah, you're the same
But
basically
yeah,
personality as Chris. That's interesting.
that's so funny. Is now I'm gonna mention that to him. I'll be like, did you know that? Because I feel like he and I are totally opposite people
Nope.
and like in person, but like our brains work the same. So that's
Yep.
hilarious.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean, anywhere you can spread joy is worth it. And like some of the things we did, like Barbie, some people didn't understand it, and they're like, this is kind of silly. And I'm like, but that's fine. Like if we have one or two haters in the crowd of like, oh, this was fun, this changed things around a little bit, that's fine. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
you'll get haters no matter what.
of
I
course, no
mean,
matter what.
even
Yeah.
if you
And I feel
conform,
like
you'll get haters.
exactly. And so my thought is like, if I'm leading with authenticity and being genuine and who I am, then if they don't like me, they don't like me. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because this is who I am, and I'm not going to change that anymore because I've lived out of that alignment before and it didn't serve me.
Mm.
And so it's been really, yeah, it's been really cool. It's been a journey, but it's been so good for my mental health and my healing to, heal out loud. And that's my favorite, heal out loud so others don't die in silence. And that's been really part of my mission is healing and showing my journey very as transparently as I can and as much as my anxiety allows to heal out loud. So that way people know that they're in safe places to talk to people or reach out for help or
It's much
it doesn't
needed.
make you weak. Yeah. And
It's
it doesn't
much
make you
needed.
weak to get help at all.
We should
Like it
have a
makes you
group. Do you
strong.
have this group already, or like to make a?
No, because I didn't, because
We should talk about this.
I think it's definitely,
Not that I
yes.
need
And
more things to do, but this is important.
right. Well, and I think, but for me, I recognize that everybody's so different that I've been hesitant with doing, and even I'm very cautious when I reply to messages too, because I'm not a mental health professional.
Yeah.
I just have my story and I know it worked for me. And I have my coping mechanisms, and I'll talk about
Yeah.
those. I do presentations on those. I do all of that. And I have those conversations regularly, but I don't want any of what works for me to be taken as
Right.
medical,
Right. Right. Right.
and you walk that fine line. And that just brings me more anxiety too of
Mm,
what happens if I say the wrong thing to one person.
that's true.
And, I'd rather be that ally and that support and help walk the path with them in whatever capacity I can for my
Yeah.
mental health too, because
Good
I have
point.
to also think about that.
Good
So,
point.
because yeah, I have thrown it around and again, you and I like, okay, how do we do something about it? Because that we're such action takers, but also just recognizing that, like, for me mentally, it's probably not the right time. One
Yeah.
day, I
You
hope
have to
so.
respect it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You work towards it, just like yoga.
hmm
You gotta work
Yep.
towards.
You got to stretch a little bit, but not cause harm. Yep.
That's great. I mean, Jess, this was amazing. Last question. Did you
Yeah.
ever try psychedelics by any chance?
I have not, but I would love to be in a clinical trial or just to try it. Okay, actually, okay, let me take
I've
that back.
tried it. Help me.
Yeah, I did ketamine therapy and but it was in an office. I didn't do like the ones that you do at home. It was in an office because I have anxiety. Look, I have anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need to be by myself trying something. That's not how this works. I've
Right.
always been scared of Medicaid or scared of drugs, all that kind of stuff. So, I did ketamine therapy and it absolutely changed my life. I say that the partial hospitalization program I did saved my life, but ketamine therapy changed my life. And it helped me work through traumas and PTSD and all that kind of stuff because I was able to work through it. I did it with a therapist while I was taking ketamine, and it absolutely changed my life. I've done
Mm.
8 treatments, and I do a
Oh,
booster
okay.
every few months, and it's amazing. But I would love,
That's
but again,
awesome.
yeah, it's psychedelics I think are so important,
Psilocybin.
and
Yeah, I did
yeah,
some
I've heard amazing
psilocybin.
things. Yeah, and I would love to, especially if once it's approved and everything. But I always joke that my mind's not a safe space, so I need to be
My
in
mind
like
was,
a
I
very
was
safe.
afraid
Yeah,
because of my
yeah,
background, and my mom has some like
right.
schizophrenia
Mm-hmm.
too. So they're like,
Yeah,
yeah, stay away from that. But I built up the courage to do it,
yeah.
and I had a very good experience. And when I came out
Good.
of my first, I had like a such a profound like connection with nature and like just the little things.
Oh,
Like
I love that.
I would see like birds and I'd be like, I never noticed them before. I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like a spirit right there. Like, and
Oh,
plants too.
yeah.
I'm into plants now. Like I told you about the succulents that
Uh-huh.
went in health at SOS.
Yeah.
We took them. I'm like, no, these
You
are
have a whole little
alive.
succulent garden now.
Yeah,
There's a
these are
lot. Yeah.
alive.
But I love, I mean, I like the world. I don't know if this sounds similar to yours, but it sounds like for me, I always said that the sun shines a little brighter now. After ketamine treatment, the
Yep,
sun
yep, yep,
shines a little brighter.
yep, yep.
And that's kind of the experience I've heard with
Hmm.
psilocybin and MDMA and all these other kind of things.
I
Like,
haven't done those, but
yeah,
yeah,
but there's a clinic here that does some of those, and I think it's amazing. Like, I am so excited to see what happens. Like, I mean, I'm a big
yeah,
fan. THC for me and my anxiety, it is one of the best things because I don't like taking like Ativan and all those kind of things for panic attacks.
yeah.
So THC for me is just a better option. There's no addiction. There's no, bad outcomes for me. And so I'm a big proponent of
See, for me, that
THC and
didn't
that.
work, and I've
Yeah.
tried it a bunch of times. It triggered paranoia in me, which my
Yeah.
mom had a lot of. So I was
Right.
worried about the
Yeah.
mushrooms, but that did not cause the same
That's
effect at
amazing.
all.
Yeah.
Everyone's
That's so
different.
great.
Like you gotta
Yeah.
find what's yours, but also it's kind
Yeah.
of risky because like the next step is like ayahuasca, and I'm like, "Ah, I don't know
Ugh,
about all
yeah,
that."
ayahuasca scares me. Like the
Yeah,
throwing up. I was good
yeah,
with it till throwing up.
you
Like,
have to do it too.
yeah, and I just,
Try the
mm-mm.
psilocybin when you feel like it, or
Well, yeah,
ask your
I wanna. I'm hoping once it's with all the phase threes that are starting and all that.
yeah.
I'm hopeful that one day it'll be.
Unfortunately, that what was it?
Oh
Wasn't it
yeah,
MAPS?
yeah.
They got rejected though. I think it was MDMA. The FDA
Oh,
rejected it recently.
it's all those stupid, silly laws
Hate to
and
bring
all
it back
that.
to reality for you
I
guys,
know, I
but
know.
you know,
Hopefully, yeah, I really hope that because like we've seen even with CBD and THC, just having seen that being reclassified and being an option
mhm.
is so incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only study, honestly. I don't know if you've had any of these, where the only study in my entire tenure in clinical research that we had to unblind because that we had to unblind and put patients on active drug was CBD and autism and seizure disorders. Because the
Oh,
effects were so profound, the FDA said it is unethical for us to not give all the patients this.
wow.
And that
Seizure
was so that was
disorder
in
for
yeah, that was in
CBD?
2015. And we were
Wow.
having to get the CBD
And
delivered in an
autism?
armored truck. Autism, like so the I think it was Fragile, no, was it Fragile X?
Oh,
It was
Fragile
one,
X.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then
Yeah.
autism and seizures. So, like
Wow.
very extreme seizure, but we literally had to get it delivered in armored trucks in 2015. And now you can buy it at the gas station. And like, but it's so like that's the only study I've ever had that we literally, the FDA was like, it's unethical not to do this for everybody that's on
Yeah.
the study. And I was just
Wow.
like mute children were communicating. And it was just like
That's awesome.
incredible. Yeah. So I'm said that kind of thing is in my
Mm.
experience with ketamine, those are things that make me so excited about psychedelics
Shoot.
and mental health
Makes you
because
wonder
yeah,
our
what can
over
we do?
reliance on, as people that work in the industry, I think we are overly reliant on pills and quick fixes and
Caffeine.
caffeine. Yeah, I got the cold brew.
It's
Um, Jess, it's been amazing. Listen, we
been
gotta
amazing.
do more.
Yes.
I can't believe it's like we haven't done one, but
Yeah.
we
Maybe you and I can
definitely.
team up on some like mental health
I've
monthly
always wanted
tips or
to.
something.
I've
Yeah,
always
maybe
wanted
like
to, and I've never really talked about it like
yeah.
on my history or any of that stuff, but I felt like with you, it's the appropriate time and place.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for holding this space. I think that that's so important and just recognizing that and you just telling your story. Like that's amazing because some people are scared too, and I get that. But again, heal out loud so others don't
There's
die in
more. That's
silence.
just like
Oh,
the PG stuff. There's
the
more.
yeah, the QC, the
We're a work
one
in
that's been
progress.
reviewed, aren't we all? Yeah. If anybody tells me that they have their entire life together, I'm like, you're lying. You're
Yeah,
lying.
yeah. But
We're all humans.
I think everyone needs, hopefully not as crazy of an experience, but I don't think, if you can survive it, this is why I'm so like, suicide's such an important thing for people to
Yeah.
discuss, because if you can survive your worst, like, it gets so
Yes.
much better, and it actually makes you so much better if you can get through that. Like, that's actually,
Right.
it becomes an advantage that other people don't have because you've
Yeah.
experienced
You walked it.
something that you know the dangers firsthand.
Yeah.
I think it made me who I am. Like, I'm in a way way more conservative now with spending than I was with even as
Yeah.
a side owner. And I think
Yeah.
I'm not conservative as is, but that kind of gave me a healthy respect for the budgets and things like that.
Sure. I mean, and empathy, right? Like if you've been there, you're going to be so much more empathetic about what somebody else is going through. And it's
Yeah.
hard to describe it if you've never been through it. I had a friend recently who I was very close to, and she's like, I really felt like, I understood. I felt like I understood what you were going through, all this kind of stuff. And she was like, it wasn't until I experienced it. And I realized that some people, whenever you hit that area, that burnout, because she unfortunately hit burnout like 2 years after I did. And we were talking about it, and she's like, I had no idea what it was like to wake up and not want to do anything, not want to exist anymore, not want to do like how quickly it can happen because it's like a little bit every day. And I think the best way to describe this is like a commute, right? Where so like if you're used to commuting every day and it starts off at 30 minutes and it increases 1 minute every 2 weeks, you look up and 2 years later you're commuting an hour and a half. But it was such a gradual increase that you didn't recognize it until you're already at this like completely, you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? How did this happen? How did my
Yeah.
commute that used to be 30 minutes now take an hour and a half without me recognizing it?
Oh, you're
And
describing Southern California perfectly.
yes, exactly. And I love using these little analogies because everybody can understand it, where it's like little things, like how it just slowly creeps up on you. And if you're not aware of it, it'll just jump out and get you one day. Like, I don't know about for you, but there was that straw that broke my back of like, I was
Hmm.
holding it together, holding it together, holding it together. Then all of a sudden, one little thing was it.
Yeah.
And that was it, where I was like, not okay anymore.
Yeah.
And that's typically how it seems to happen is that like, and maybe it's the commute and you're like, it took me an hour and 45 minutes to get here today. I wasted 4 hours of my life commuting. And then
Yeah.
that's when you kind of wake up and you're like, oh my God, how do I even come back from this now? But you've
Mm.
incrementally done little things so that's why I always talk about like those check-ins. And that's something but everybody has different, right? What might work for me might not work for somebody else. But having that individual check-in with myself of saying, this is what my schedule looks like. What am I dreading this week? What is bringing me joy this week? What am I looking forward to? And then trying to put in, you know, things that like going for a walk or doing just little things that are going to give me a little bit of dopamine
Yeah. Yeah.
and not just suck and suck and suck that energy out. But
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, these frameworks, we have to establish them for ourselves. And this
hmm
is like a new industrial revolution problem, and now we're in the
yeah,
informational age where it's even going to be more compounded.
right. And as a leader, I think this is one important, this is kind of where I'll leave you with, but as a leader, your staff is going to do what you do, not do what you say.
Yep.
And so my team saw me working to death. They saw me pushing myself and emailing at midnight and emailing at 5 a.m. and all these kind of things. No matter what you say to them, even if you're like, I don't expect this out of you, I want you to have work-life balance. If they see you not doing that, they're going to think that the expectation is for them to do it as well. So the best thing you can do for a leader, as a leader, is to take care of yourself so that you're a good example for your team, because
Hmm.
then your team will see this is important. This is something that they value. But before, I would be working late, so they would feel like they needed to work late, or I was stressed and freaking out and whatever, and they felt like they weren't doing enough to take some of the load off. So shifting that as well, because then it helped me realize that I was doing it for my team, not only for myself. And that's what I needed was to see, okay, these people are watching what I do. How am I living? How do I make my actions match my words? And they're doing, and it's not the whole do as I say, not as I do. Because the expectation, you're leading them, you're mentoring them, you're showing them what this is like and what and hopefully what they want to do and how what they want to aspire to if that's, that's the kind of goals that they have. But you want to make sure that they see it for exactly what it is, but also that you're taking care of yourself too, so that they do.
Yeah. No, it's super important. I mean, I have a small team of 5,
Hmm.
and so I still get to have one-on-ones with everyone every day that I'm there, and
That's
we
awesome.
can discuss these kind of things. I feel like
Hmm.
they're pretty open with me now.
That's great. You had to build that trust, I'm
You have
sure,
to build
to
a
make it a
trust because
safe. Yeah.
initially they tell you what they think you want to hear, and it takes like a year for everyone,
Yeah.
I think.
But then even like what, and I think it's important, like building that trust, right? Like of,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, and it's so funny because some of my friends have been like, oh, well, you being more vocal about it has made me more vocal. So even saying like, y'all, I'm sorry, it's been a
Mhm.
crazy day. I'm, I didn't get this done. Just being honest.
Yeah,
Like you're
yeah,
allowed to be honest. And I think just that authenticity, again, leading with authenticity and showing that you might not have it all together. Nobody has all their shit together. Don't act like you do, because then
yeah.
everybody thinks that they're doing a horrible job if they don't,
And
when
that's
none
why
of us
your
do.
posts were so important and still are. And
Thank you.
whoever told you not to do that's full of shit because we don't need to read press releases like,
Yeah,
humble bragging and shit like that. This is
right.
authentic and other people are going through it. It's to suffer is to human. I think DMX said that. Rest in
Yeah,
peace.
it's a human experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Suffering is a human experience. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And it's inherent. Like you're gonna go
Hmm.
through it. You got to figure out how to deal with
Yeah.
it. Just amazing. I mean, people
Yeah.
need to get a hold of you on LinkedIn, in the show notes and on YouTube. We'll definitely do more.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll
absolutely.
go live one of these days or something. But
Yeah. Oh, that'd be
yeah,
fun. Yeah, we can take some questions on how we regulate and what our coping mechanisms are, and
yikes.
we can do a guided meditation.
Two
Look.
shots to the head. That
Oh
sounds good. I
gosh.
got some stuff behind me. But yeah, no, it's like serious conversations that
Yeah.
I could laugh about now, but there was a
Yes.
time where I was definitely not laughing.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with laughing about it. I mean, that's how you cope.
Yep,
And, like, you got to do what you got to do
that's
to get
right.
through.
Well, thank you so much for the important work you do, Jess, and everybody go connect, like, subscribe, comment, share, and catch you guys later. Bye bye.